It's Friday night, and welcome to the Fancast, episode 16, where we discuss world-class bullshitters and other videos that they put out. They being Jeff, for the most part. On the line tonight is a lonely Liquid Metal Pro.
Well, okay, you can't actually hear me whistle, but I'm supposed to simulate something falling from the sky, crashing and burning, and people screaming on fire. So,
Ah!
use your imaginations, people.
And I'm your host, Brainmuffin. On later tonight, we will have Mr. Kendo Slice as a special guest. He is in the process of moving, and so we'll see what we can get with him today. So this past Thursday, as in yesterday, we had episode 91 as the guys climb closer and closer to the century mark. There's been many changes over this past year on the flagship show. And as was mentioned, and we'll mention it now, we'll mention it later, if you would like to be on the Fancast as part of a tryout or a limited guest spot, please let me know. I will put in the links in the descriptions and all that to my Twitter feed. You can also find me on Facebook or just in the WCBS Facebook fan page. And let us know, because Kendo's getting busier and busier with the main show. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with our monster SmackDown, but we'll try and revive that. Right now, a lot of effort's being put into Schlocktoberfest. So once all that's kind of settles down, maybe we'll get back to that. But we are looking for guest spots. And so if you'd like to essentially try out, let me know.
Definitely do, ladies and gentlemen. We could definitely use some more voices. But also, not just because we need we could use more voices on the show, but because it really is a fan cast. So, if the opportunity is there, voice your opinion here and there, why not, right? It's a good deal.
Absolutely. And we pay as much as the main show. Well, at least for now.
Which is?
Zippo.
Oh.
We pay in good intentions
I was going to say the
and warm feelings.
Well, we'll just spare your feelings one time. That's considered payment.
Right. Now, tonight, normally I don't drink beer while we do the show, but tonight I am. I'm having Sam Adams 20 pounds of pumpkin. I bought a variety of seasonal variety packs, so there's 2 of everything. Now, have no fear. This is only the first one, and I will be this weekend shooting more beer reviews, and this will be on that list. I've got several to go. I, too, am closing in on 100 beer reviews. That's in total, not just for this year. I have picked my beer for number 100, and obviously we'll reveal it when I shoot that video and upload it. So, as always, I'll put those in the description below, or you can just click on my name on YouTube, either on this station or on the main cast station over on WCBS, and you can see my videos, all kinds of stuff, and the like. So we'll do a nice pre-commercial there. So episode 91, as many of these are starting to have, there's quite a few Star Wars things, because Star Wars is in the news as we get closer and closer. Believe it or not, there's another movie coming out this December. Normally by now we've seen 2 or 3 trailers. We've seen a teaser, which basically gave us a hint that it is Empire. So one of the things that the guys discussed, and actually Dean Green and I have gone back and forth in the comments section for episode 91. We're going to have to agree to disagree, I think, at this point. And that was over movie theme music. Now, Jeff and Dion and some of the other guys it's like the 80s are kind of like the 60s were to my generation, where it was a golden age that maybe wasn't so golden if you lived through it, but maybe when you look back. It's kind of like the decade you're born in. I think they were all born in the 80s, or maybe the 90s, I don't know. But anyway, where many of the movies, the music became iconic. And even in the prequels, I think it was, is it the Duel of the Fates? I forget the name of that show. When it's the music playing when Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are going at it. That music showed up in other commercials and things like that. Although I do think they have a point. It does seem more and more. What started this was the drunken review they did of Suicide Squad, where the first half of the movie, it's like a classic radio station on skip. Did you see that movie, LMP?
Which ones? Skip or Suicide Squad?
Suicide Squad.
Oh, God. Honestly, I want to lie and say no. but the answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, I saw it with my wife and daughter. My daughter and I were supposed to do what we never did. We were supposed to do a video on it. I knew going in that it wasn't great, so my expectations were pretty low. So as a result, I don't hate it like everyone else does. I don't see it as a big pile of crap, but it's not even quite a mediocre movie. Now, the first half, I liked the classic rock. I didn't mind the changes in music, but the introductions of the characters, which happened twice for the most part, did get a bit old. And then when it got more thematic, I think it's when it really sucked. But, I remember having a conversation with a coworker of mine back in the 90s about the music in movies. So I think this is a trend that started probably in the mid-90s. It may even go back further, where the soundtrack would come out for a movie, and it'd be, you'd see a movie, and it would say featuring the music of, and it would list a bunch of bands. And in many ways, the bands they had in the movie were more important than even the movie. And many times these were songs that were already hits. These weren't songs just written for the movie. And I think it just progressively got worse. And people say, hey, we don't really need any music. We can just hit iTunes and download all we need and pay the royalties, and ta-da, we have a soundtrack. So one of the questions that Jeff posed to everybody was, what in the last 17 years, he said, which was a number he pulled out his head, what movies have had impactful soundtracks?
Well, anything. How long ago did the prequels come out? The last Star Wars prequels.
I want to say the first one was in '99, and then they were every 3 years.
So I would say maybe last 17 years. They were there. What are we in 2017, right?
Right.
So okay, maybe a little over 17 years with that one, but the other two. So you've had at least with Phantom Menace, I remember hearing that theme all over the place for a very. I mean, the movie sucked, but who had like? I mean, I remember hearing it in TV shows, especially when they would parody the scenes from it. So I don't know if I would say it was impactful, but I would definitely say it was memorable.
Right. I see. To me, and a lot of it is, this is a subjective question, and this is where Dion and I think we disagree with about Tron. But I thought the music in the prequels was pretty good.
Yeah.
But like the Pirates of the Caribbean, for instance, especially the first one, it had great music.
Oh yeah.
And it really had some themes in there that resonated, and you would hear. And then to me, now I saw Tron Legacy after it was out, obviously on Blu-ray, and I really liked that movie. I know Disney really poo-pooed it. A lot of people didn't like it for various reasons. I think the problem was they were pushing all that 3D nonsense as opposed to making a good movie. But Dion made the comment that that was just a music video for Daft Punk, basically. And what's interesting, if you listen to Daft Punk stuff before and after, it's very different than what's in that movie. And it's like thematic, but it's electronic. It's not always, because there are French horns and other things that are in there. And to me, there's a bridge scene in Tron. You can find it on YouTube, probably crappy quality, but go look at the bridge scene on Tron and compare it to the bridge scene in The Force Awakens. The emotions are there. The music is a heck of a lot better in Tron. And it is a true father sacrificing for his son. I mean, you feel it the whole time. There's tension. Who's going to escape? Who's not? What's going to happen? And in Force Awakens, it's like Han is dead the moment he yells Ben. And there's the music's almost not even there the whole movie. You get a hint that that things are about to turn when it's light, and then it gets dark, it gets black and red as the sun goes out. But it's, to me, the movie, the Tron music is very good. You can listen to it on its own as the individual songs. Some of the stuff is reworked in different bits and pieces of it. Daft Punk has some other songs that I like, but not many. The stuff I actually like the most is that soundtrack. And I like the Inception music, the main theme to Inception. I actually found a 30-minute loop and of it, and to me, but I have a background in music and playing viola and being in an orchestra, so that even if when they're electronic or mixture and they have these very orchestral sounds, I really like that. Um, Jeff talks about Beverly Hills Cop a lot, and that has some good songs. Some of those were out, some came out for the movie or with the movie, but it's a real poppy theme. So I think that some of this is really what do you mean by soundtrack and what is it that you're looking for. But I will say the general premise I do agree on. I think we've had some gems here and there, and a lot of stuff in between that's just completely forgettable.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, as much as I don't like bringing it up, but it's the focal point of this topic, Suicide Squad. It was basically essentially the way. I mean, we had a conversation about this at work about that movie, and God, it's like so difficult talking about it. I really cannot put it into words. That's just how much I hate talking about this movie. But one thing that came up was why did it suck? And I think I summed it up best as saying too many ingredients in a recipe. You could have essentially taken out certain things in a movie. It would have been much better. But back on it, yes, I don't. The only song I remember in that movie was the Eminem song, "Without Me," and that was because it was Harley Quinn getting dressed in her more sluttier clothes, if you want to call it that, and it said the line "Two Trailer Park Girls," and I was like, I just rolled my eyes at that point. I'm like, God, why did I even bother watching this shit? And especially with people that I know where we're going to enjoy it, because let's face it, to them it's all about calling back or putting on whatever's trendy or was trendy like 10, 20 years ago. So largely forgettable music in that movie, and I don't even remember any other movies having anything as good as that since.
Yeah. Well, see, this is why I think this trend started back in the '90s, and that there was a bigger deal made on the songs by the hit groups. It was like, okay, we got to get here's the top 5 groups. We got to get some music from them, whether it's a new hit or a hit that's about to come out or whatever. I mean, back in the '80s. So here, let's kind of take it to my generation growing up. Rocky 3, I do believe, was when Survivor had their big hit. Well, yes, they were using a rock group that was up and coming. They weren't well known yet, but they watched the movie, and the Eye of the Tiger song came out from things that Apollo was saying to Rocky in the movie. You got to have the Eye of the Tiger. You got to keep the Eye of the Tiger, and
Definitely.
that I think that made that movie impactful because it not only had the beat, and granted, the video is pure '80s shtick, okay, especially early '80s. But that was back in the pioneering days of music videos, and no one really knew what was good and what wasn't. But okay, it's a rock song. It becomes a hit, but it's written for the movie after the band watches it. It's not, hey, this song is on the top 40 or was in the '60s. And I understand, like if you're like say you're making a period piece and it's set in June of '69, you're probably going to have some songs in there to help set the mood that were hits that month and maybe a few months before, maybe a couple from the year before. But I do agree. It's Suicide Squad. It really feels that Suicide Squad is a great example of them. This is why I fear for Justice League, and what I also saw in Rogue One. Here was a movie that had a decent premise, was probably an okay movie, but the movie execs went in and too many cooks. Right? They don't know how to make movies. Sometimes I'm not sure they know how to market movies, but they put their 2 cents in, and then before you know it, you've got 5 or 6 main ideas trying to drive as one, and they're all separate. And so you get these what feels like 2 entrances of people, and you get these because what really, in many ways, my favorite part of the movie was the first half. In some ways, because of the music, but because when it became, like I've always said, when it became thematic, the movie just was horrible after that. Once they start the boss run, to me, because then it's like, okay, are you a Joker Harley Quinn movie? Because he comes in and out. Are we going to show the bad guys again? or the good guys, the ambiguous good guys and stuff. It was just, okay, make up your mind where we're going, because we're going all
A
over the
severe
place.
case of autism in that.
Right. And
I was just as a severe case.
yeah, in many ways, you get this with a lot of rom-coms and chick flicks where the music is just pop stuff, and it's thrown in to maybe set a mood. It's not like they don't interact with the music. I'm not as anti Hans Zimmer as Jeff is. I don't really understand why he has this problem, or has this negative opinion of him. I like some of the things he does with the music. Zimmerman feels the music as a conversation, and so the music might set up a question that the movie answers or go back and forth. I've actually seen some videos on Hans and what he's looking for and the types of things that he comes up with. And he is, again, it's because I majored in music when I first started in college, so I understand where he's coming from, but it does get very repetitive. But but I do agree. So many of the more recent movies. The Marvel movies, for other than the stuff for the Avengers or in Captain America, when you have a bit of a flashback during the war. I don't know if I know any of them. Remember, other than when they use like Iron Man from Black Sabbath or something.
That would pretty much be the case because I'm trying to think of Marvel movies and scores that I remember, and that's pretty much one of the few I can say off the top of my head. And even then, probably the only one other than that I can remember, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, is the Guardian of the Galaxy movies. Because essentially that was all, talking about period piece. Remember, the character of Star-Lord, what was it? What decade was it that he was in? I think was it like the 60s or 70s? Something like that, right? So, that's like
70s, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, 70s. So, of course, you had pop hits from, that era. That's the music he was listening to. So, other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I remember from the Marvel movies. I don't know. Maybe I'm just drawing blanks tonight, but I really can't think of anything like in my head.
Well, I just watched Doctor Strange this past week.
Still haven't seen it, sadly.
And I couldn't tell you what music's in it.
Wow.
And again, that's another movie that I understand why people liked it. I mean, it was okay. And then I watched Deadpool this past week, and I finally watched Deadpool, and I was like 10 minutes in. I'm like, this is better than almost every Marvel movie. It's definitely better than Wonder Woman. That movie, I mean, yeah, the CGI does get stupid and hokey, but they all do. But it doesn't fully defy the laws of physics like so much of that stuff does. Things still feel like they have weight. But
with Deadpool, I can definitely say sorry if I didn't mean to, but with Deadpool, just to throw out there, the thing is, I think they knew what they were doing with that movie, so there were things that they intentionally did. Because it kind of felt like this was really Deadpool's world. And I'm not just talking about like the world around him. I mean the world in his own head too. Because, he's always has that, he has that head case. So, I don't know. The more, I don't want to get into it too much, but definitely with Deadpool, oh my God, miles better. Much more memorable. I want to say I remember the score there, but I do remember the music almost fitting the themes.
Oh, yeah. And now, the other way you can argue it is that the music shouldn't necessarily stand out. It should just support the movie. So
Yep.
if it's not there, you notice it. If it's overly there, you notice it. But if it just kind of flows, maybe you don't notice it so much.
That's why video games are the medium that can make or break based on music alone.
Right. So to me, it needs to support and be noticeable, but not be the thing. And so anyway, but the thing on the topic of Doctor Strange, there, just kind of as a side note and closing this stuff out, I like the movie okay, but what I'm sick of there is the good, if you will, leader who has a dark side, with that, I forget what they called her character, but she was tapping into the dark energy to stay alive for so long. And I was like, this cliche is so overdone, I don't even give a crap anymore. This whole concept that you can't have someone who's wholesome and good without them having a secret that's dark and actually destroys the confidence of the students. And one of the guys who had been here with her for quite a while, I don't even remember his character name, but in the closing credit scene, he starts going around and killing the other sorcerers, or wizards, or whatever they're calling themselves. And I was like, so that disenchants him, but nobody else whatsoever. And I was just like, this is stupid. Like I said, this cliche. I'm so sick and tired of this cliche. The good is not good. That it's impossible to have a good person, or a hero, if you will. There's got to be some secret that's going to bring them down, and it's going to disenfranchise some. This is the whole thing with the not the Expendables, the Incredibles, right? Mm-hmm. Mr. Incredible's a bit of a pompous ass, and Eddie, I think it's Eddie. What's that little kid's name that he dresses up as his own thing, but he ends up being Syndrome at the end because he wants revenge?
Oh, Buddy.
And it's like, okay, and they've been doing this for 20 years or longer. Can we move on to some other go find some other cliche to beat into the ground? So to me, that was just weak writing. Because what I think should have happened is, and maybe it's based on the comic, I don't know, but it would be nice, I think, if that character wasn't tapping in, and more like Yoda, he wasn't tapping in the dark side to stay alive for 1,000 years or almost 1,000 years, and have him be the sage, but know about that dark energy and that dark magic, and give better credence, as opposed to being aloof and avoiding, and then having the student go behind their back and discover things on their own. Be more candid. Excuse me. Be more upfront with it, and then you have an actual good. Then you really have a good versus evil, as opposed to an evil versus kind of good. That juxtaposition needs to be as far apart as possible to make it the inner conflict of someone in the middle have far more meaning. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Yeah. Alrighty, moving on then. So one of the things that we had this past week, just a couple days ago actually, for good or bad, and I've had friends on Facebook that are on both sides of this argument, and that is Hugh Hefner dying at the age of 91. In my view, despite what you might think of his his take on morals or whatever, he definitely built an empire out of nothing, just from nothing, I should say. He was not a really wealthy man that was looking for something to somewhere to put his money. He did have an impact on society, I think in some ways good, in some ways bad. I still think, sexuality is something that is so taboo in the States. It's kind of weird that it is so much.
No kidding.
And I can understand people being all upset about pornography. Or, to me, see, my problem, this has been true for a long time. This is why a lot of my fundamentalist friends think I'm a wacko.
Hit us with it.
I don't view, and it's been a long, long time since this is true, I don't really view Playboy as pornography. I view it as artistic nudity. Because you go back and look at a lot of paintings. There's a painting, I forget the exact, it's called The Picnic. Mm-hmm. And it's several hundred years ago. But these two guys, two guys, it's like these aristocratic guys, and they're well dressed, and they have a picnic also, and there's a woman with them. They're fully dressed and enjoying, apples and wine and whatever, grapes and all that kind of crap. And they're in a kind of like a field, and there's woods and stuff. She's stark raving naked. Now, the pose is such that, and I think there's something that drapes over her inner thigh, as it were, but her boobs are well exposed. And there's a lot of classical art that's exactly like this. And you can argue it both ways. I can understand both points because people will say, "Well, that was pornographic because it's like you look at the classical Greek statues. Men and women were naked. They had a very idealistic form, right? Kind of like we do with masculinity. Masculinity with muscles and trim and everything. But they weren't. I don't believe, if I remember my art history correctly, they weren't fully glorifying this stuff. This was kind of an exploration, if you will. That it took a lot of artistic talent to replicate the human form so well. And if you look at a lot of play now, more recently they got a little more risque, and I understand when they started it was very risque. But compared to the likes of Penthouse or Hustler or any of those others, where tantalization is what is first in mind, and it's hard to say that these things have an artistic value. To me, Playboy always had. It was kind of the classic, the high art. Maybe you want to call it high erotic art, if you will, in the guise of photography as opposed to painting. And they had a much higher standard. The women are far more beautiful than you'll find in most other magazines. They tend to be in better shape. Because this is, I think, why you get celebrities, women, who have posed in Playboy over the years. Even when they weren't, it wasn't part of who they were. They weren't sex kittens like Marilyn Monroe. They could have. Some of them were actors. I mean, some were, but some were singers. Some were athletes. It became this different thing. People wouldn't be proud of saying, "Oh, I'm going to be the centerfold in Penthouse," but they would be proud of, "I'm going to be the centerfold in Playboy or in a pictorial in Playboy."
Yeah, it was like a huge badge of honor. Question.
Sir.
When would you say that they got risque? What year would you say about that?
I think it got a little more open when his daughter took over. I forget what year that was. But see, in some ways, what was expected was changed. This is when you started seeing far less pubic hair, but that was the thing that young women were, and men were doing, manscaping, different, but it's not where I would say, it wasn't the likes of Penthouse, or any of those others where sometimes it's like you're more of a gynecological exam than, magazine, I know what I mean, but it's like there were a little more hints.
Funny, you mentioned that now. There was an episode of Celebrity Deathmatch where I think they had Larry Flint versus Hugh Hefner, and they had that debate there too. God damn it! And for anybody who watched that show, Celebrity Deathmatch, if you're able to find that particular fight, watch it and you'll see what I mean. That guy was like obsessed with wanting to see the insides of women. That's how I'll leave it at.
Yeah, but Larry did his stuff to be a lot of it. Look at the attitude of the person.
Yeah,
Hugh knew he was tantalizing and he was pushing the norms, but he wasn't, at least as far as I know, and I'm not, an expert in his biography, but I've seen biographies from both of them. It wasn't like, "Hey, I'm going to keep doing this till the government comes down on me," which was what Larry was like. He was like, "Who says this is illegal? We're just going to do it until they come down on us." Whereas Hugh knew kind of where the boundary was, and he would move it a tiny bit. Right? We had mostly topless. If you look at the pictures of Marilyn, you can see her butt in profile, but it's a lot tamer than what you see 10 years later. And so the goalpost did move, but they only moved to a certain point. And what you also don't have is, and I don't even know if you still have this. I mean, I remember, I thought it was in the 90s or early 2000s. Either Playboy, Penthouse, or Hustle. One of those two. I think they still stayed nude, but they took the sex stuff out. Because there was something to do with it not being able to sell on military. I don't remember exactly. But some of those had, stills from what was essentially, a porn shoot in many ways. And so you've got, guys fully at attention and women and doing stuff. And, to me, so on my libertarian side of me says, let the market decide. Now, some would say, well, is this okay for children to view? Or I don't really have an answer for that. Um, the thing that I think is kind of screwed up with American society is a bare boob is like this huge taboo. Yet Saturday morning cartoons have long been violent and vulgar in different ways. So it's okay for the kids to see people beat the living crap out of each other, but oh my gosh, if there's a semi-naked woman, holy cow, it's scandal. Now you could argue from a feminist standpoint that it's patriarchy that you're seeing a naked woman and not a naked man, and that may be true. I don't know, but
Well, I mean, I don't want to just like go straight and bash into feminists, but let's face it. Have you seen how the majority of them really look?
yeah, well, that in that case, yeah. But I know I remember talking about this with people I worked with in the library in the '90s, and there were women who were straighter. Like I'd
Oh,
rather
okay,
look at a
cool.
naked woman than a naked man. Some part of it too is just the naked man in an athletic pose like what you get in some of the sculptures of Michelangelo or even some of the Greek sculptures. It's one thing, but who wants to look at your
Yeah.
stereotypical 30-year-old pot-bellied guy? But anyway,
Well,
but
typically, like, sorry, it's like
no,
typically like the female form has always been appealing to people, not necessarily just guys. You hit it on the head as well. Women too.
yeah,
I've known a lot of straight women who have told me that sometimes they would admire a woman that had a nice pair of breasts or a nice figure or a nice shape,
right,
even nice facial features.
all right,
Now, if it was out of jealousy, that's another story. Because let's face it, most women hate other women, but they would be out and vocal, open about it. And they didn't care who listened. They had the guts to say well, obviously for obvious reasons, they would say what most guys would not blurt out. Because let's face it, a guy says that, and well, now you have a big shitstorm on your hands at worst case scenario. Especially when I was dating one of my exes. Oh, she regularly would mention like if she saw like this gorgeous woman with like, and she would describe her like figures to me, and I'm like, damn, are you trying to entice me into other women or something? Because of the way she would describe them. She would I mean, of course, she would also frequently, you know, like tell me if there was a handsome guy to annoy me, or whether or not she was doing that and because she liked them. I don't know. That's another story for another time. But she would, again, like I said, others, like other friends I knew, they would always mention these things. Another thing I actually wanted to bring up, the whole question about when did it get risque, because back in high school, you want to talk about how Playboy, it keeps getting the whole porn argument. I actually do have a copy of a Playboy magazine from high school when a friend of mine got me a signed copy of a then wrestler by the name of Candice Michelle, female wrestler, very gorgeous woman, very voluptuous. Signed a copy for it. Now, I've searched through the Playboy magazine, and I remember, now this was me in high school, so keep that in mind when I'm talking about this. My mindset in high school was if it featured nudity, it was porn. So it was, you already know where I'm going with this.
mm-hmm.
I would go through the Playboy magazine, and when I got to the stuff about Candice Michelle, who was, I gotta admit, and even some of the other nudity stuff, it wasn't really like enticing. It was almost like it was sensual, but nothing too crazy, nothing too explicit. To me, it wasn't even really porn at points. Yes, there's nudity, see a nice pair of breasts, see some nice lips, nice ass, you name it, whatever, right? But it seemed almost artistic. Even the way they photograph it.
Right.
It was like, I
Well,
mean,
you've got soft light usually.
Yeah.
You have poses that they're not too difficult to get in some of those poses. They actually have, they're trying to accentuate the form and the lines and the curves of a
Yep,
woman.
definitely. Because
Whereas the other
yes,
magazines, compare them. They got harsh light. They're like, here I am, everything. There's a very, very different attitude toward it. Now I'm not saying, hey, people who think it's pornographic and have a problem with it, great. You have a problem with it, you can just walk away from it. It is one of
Easily.
those things in photography, it is a touchy subject still today. The idea of doing nude photography, and there are ways of doing nudes that are very even more artistic, where you have different body parts and shadow and light, and especially when you don't show the face, right? You might show just say the stomach and the breast, or you might have a picture over the rear end, and now the dogs are barking at God knows what.
I think they're agreeing with you.
Right, but or you utilize a very shallow depth of field, and so you're concentrating on one part while the rest of it falls away. Those to me are just really artistic renderings with the camera and the lens choice and lighting and stuff. And a lot of it's the intent, and I think there are cultures, and even ancient cultures, where there were lots of times there would be phallic cults and things, and many times the intent of some of it is the intent to be tantalizing and to be outrageous and stuff, but some of it is, this is a sign of some god, or this is a rite. And even now today in Japan, there are fertility temples and things, and there's lots of phallic symbols everywhere, and some people would be highly offended, and I'm like, okay, that's great, you don't have to go there. But anyway, I can't deny some of that. So I think he changed society, some for the best, some for better, and some for worse, like anybody else. To me, I think they got way overly kind of left leaning. They kind of left the liberal mindset behind in the latter years. I haven't read an article, I don't even remember how long, probably 25 years, or even really looked at stuff. Well,
I'll put it like this. I don't. But if Playboy indeed was porn, and let's leave it at, and even go a step further, quality porn. This is me back in high school, college, even I say in the last 10 years maybe. Then if it really was, then why am I buying porn, or why have I gotten subscriptions to like other porn sites or magazines instead of Playboy?
Right.
It's really very simple when you think about it, because if it is just on nudity alone, and you can even not, like, I'll say maybe 10 years back, not even 10 years back, I was still probably, and no, don't think weird of me for saying this, people, but I was a teenager, I had a computer, and I had access to the internet. There were a lot of streaming sites, a lot of, not streaming sites, those websites, the ones where you could download music illegally. Well, there was a lot of sites like that also...
file sharing sites.
Right. Thank you. Because I don't want the people who got after Napster after me now. Fuckers. Anyways.
That would be Metallica.
Fuck. I can't beat them. But anyways, like you could there was like nude images that people would download online all the time. So leaked celebrity sex tapes, or amateur stuff that people would put out all the time. So that stuff has been existing even, I would say, sometime after Playboy came out. But if you still want to go with the whole porn argument, since I would say like maybe the later half of the 90s, there was always accessibility to stuff that more people found more enticing than it. It's not really porn. If anything, I could buy when somebody says, hey, look, I do buy the articles. They are very entertaining articles. They're very interesting reads. And as somebody who actually has a copy of one, I can tell you there is a focus on, hey, look, read some of the stuff here. Hell, even some of the stuff that they mentioned about how, for example, like, there wasn't, let me look at here. They have an article here about a female country singing artist. See, I didn't even know about stuff like that. No. Reviews on movies. They have, in this one in particular, they had about DVD of the month, Walk the Line with Reese Witherspoon and Joaquin Phoenix. So it isn't really what I would call porn. Now, I could definitely argue adult entertainment, which can mean different things.
Right.
But not pornography. Yes, is it showing nudity? Will nudity entice some people? Of course, because it's a female form, and it's a natural thing to feel some kind of response to it. Let's face it. It is what it is. People, I know it's, especially now when we're getting in this whole debate of whether it's liberal, conservative, or whatnot, and how that's influencing entertainment as well. it's one of those things where unfortunately we all have to agree to disagree. Mostly because it really should be a simple debate. It really has no simple answer for anybody. For us, we can simplify it for ourselves, but not everyone is going to see it like that, and it's just unfortunate, really. I mean, I really got. That's really all I wanted to say about that. Let me put this Playboy away because I'm like still looking at her. She still looks pretty good now. Just saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
that's all I said.
right. So, well, we talk a lot about the pictures, but you do bring up another point that Playboy was also known for its very hard-hitting interviews. Many, I think them and Rolling Stone many times had higher journalistic integrity than some of the other so-called news magazines and things like that. For at least for a while, this is where I think when the left started to get a little kooky and they had a chance to stay with the liberal mindset and not go into left statism, they kind of strayed from that a little bit. And, all print medias have had problems over the last 15, 20 years as more and more stuff has gone online, more and more content is electronic in various forms. So I get it, with them having problems. But with some other guy, coworker and I were talking about it the other day, when you look at, say, the heyday when Hugh had his clubs and different things, that's back in the 60s. And even with James Bond in one of the movies, he had a Playboy Club card. It was very exclusive to get into. It was, wasn't cheap. And then all those clubs went away, I think, in the 70s at some point, and I don't remember exactly why. But I think that was when the empire was kind of slowly phasing. It was going the other direction. It wasn't growing anymore. It was kind of contracting. And I think it was just in many ways a sign of a time, just change in what people wanted out of stuff. But I didn't mean to talk about it for so long. But he passed along. You can agree or disagree with his stance on any subject, but I don't think it can be denied that he did influence. I think, again, some positivity. He kind of opened up some of the social norms that were really constricted and in many ways in bondage. And maybe in some ways things got pushed. The sexual revolution may or may not be a great thing, but I think the opening and at least getting some of the conversation going is a very good thing. And and whether or not, my wife was asking me, is he having sex with all these girls? I think, I don't know how much of that was just the mystique of Hugh and how much it was real, and I really don't care. So,
Well, if you want to go a step further, I just thought about this. He was on an episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I think what I found interesting about that episode, very memorable episode actually when you look at it, because the whole premise of it was that Hillary wanted to pose nude for Playboy because she was offered, and Uncle Phil Uncle Phil was pissed about it. He didn't want to hear about his daughter posing nude, obviously, but Will Smith was definitely for it. Carlton was against it for obvious reasons, especially saying how it could hurt his future political career. But of course, he goes to the Playboy Mansion, and he's the guy that acts all creepy around the women.
right.
But the whole thing is when Will goes with he has kind of this intention that he's going to get a score at the Playboy Mansion. Now, Hugh Hefner, you see him, he's very cool. He's very calm. He's a very reserved man. He hangs with the women arm in arm. They find a certain charm in the older guy. And let's face it, some younger women do like older men because there's certain, especially the way they carry themselves, a level of maturity, level of charm, especially someone like Hugh Hefner, who built that empire, essentially. Hey, women like a successful man. So there's that attraction too.
Right.
Especially when you consider the whole evolution thing. Women usually went to the men who had the more resources. So there's that as well. But the one thing that I got from the episode, now thinking about it, is how Will had this mindset of, great. He ditched his girl. He ditched his date or girlfriend. I forgot what it was, to go to the Playboy Mansion. And he had this mindset of, oh, great, I'm going to probably get their numbers to one of them, one of the models or something like that. He goes there, and these models aren't even interested in him, as if to say, we're just more than just nude models. And some of them were. Some of them, I believe, were like lawyers, a doctor or something like that. And then some of them dated like famous athletes. And it just made him so insecure and realize there were really more to just the nudity. Even the question of whether or not he slept with all the models, I think, got brought up in the episode, and it was never really answered. It was just kind of left out there for the audience to figure out. And based on the clues, it probably might be no, because it seemed like some of these women were very, or maybe even yes, if you think even by that argument, because they were very selective, almost as if to say, yes, I pose for Playboy, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to sleep with you because I showed the world my body, type of thing. So I don't know. I guess that really depends on the audience, really, to determine for themselves, did he or didn't he?
Yeah. Well, that's why I think part of it's the mystique. Is that's at least what is the idea to portray. How much truth there? I think, especially early on, it's probably very true. As he got older, who knows? I've heard stories, but I mean, obviously, it's hard to corroborate any of that stuff. But one way or the other, I don't know if I really care. So it's his life, and good for him if it's true, and maybe I don't know. All right, so let's move on. We've talked that thing to death, so no pun intended. So one of the things that did happen during the show I want to say last week, yesterday. Well, it depends on when you're listening to this. So during 91, was this take on what would happen, and also, it might happen in episode 8. And I kind of want to wrap this up with also what Dion was talking about. And Jeff's kind of, his pre-rant, if you will. I think that's even how I put it in the timeline of him getting. He was like, if they have that, I'm going to throw my Coke at the screen. There's a part of me that actually just wants to see this movie with Jeff. I want to sit like 3 or 4 rows behind him, and when he picks up a small child and chucks him at the screen, I don't want to sit next to him because I think if he really gets angry, he might choke Phil or Dan or somebody, whoever's sitting next to him. And I'm Jeff's height, but he outweighs me by a fair amount, and I wouldn't stand much of a chance.
They found Phil's missing foot.
Yeah, I agree with him. But see, my expectations are so low now. I know he likes Rogue One better than I do. To me, Rogue One is a great comedy, which makes people irritated because it's supposed to be this dark war movie. And it's like, it's not dark. It's not even a good war movie. Go watch The Dirty Dozen if you want to see how to do this kind of movie correctly in a almost a pseudo heist movie in a war setting. We already had the war in Star Wars. That's also what's so stupid. We had the Empire blowing up a whole freaking planet in the very first movie that came out. How much more war do you need? You need to see limbs getting torn off, which we didn't see. We saw things blowing up, and yes, you have a space battle, but they cut to the inside of, when some of those, especially when the proton torpedoes hit, and they were rocking the station, and things are blowing up, and they're hitting some of the turbo lasers, and these guys are flying off, and there's flames and everything else. There's plenty of war. In Empire, you have the trenches, almost like trench warfare against mechanized, tanks, if you will, and these rebels get slaughtered. And then in Return of the Jedi, you have a lot of hand-to-hand combat and primitive weapon systems. And, just look at all those helmets at the end and know how the Ewoks caught the heroes and what they were going to do with them. They were going to eat them. So anyway, I've really digressed, but I kind of like these pre-rants that it's like I don't even know if I could be surprised with how much SJW nonsense and how stupid Episode 8 is going to be.
All I'll say is if they reveal a character on screen that's in a wheelchair, somebody please prepare to throw somebody who's already in a wheelchair at your screen. No, that is not a call to violence. That is just artistic freedom.
Well, as long as that person doesn't suddenly hover with no training and pick up a lightsaber. This is one of these things that I've also keep seeing. People keep saying that Rey is not a Mary Sue, and it's just like, look, you just want to deny reality. The only reason she does stuff is because of script. I actually commented that to somebody. I forget. It was on the what's his name, Guido channel, where he was basically making fun of the people who signed the petition to have Jar Jar removed, and somebody asked about when's Rey a Mary Sue. And I said, or how is she a Mary Sue? And I said because script, and they didn't get it. And I've been meaning to reply to him for the last couple of days because yes, I was very obtuse, But the whole reason she earns, she goes from running into stuff in the Millennium Falcon to 2 minutes later doing extremely difficult and advanced maneuvers is because the script says she has to. Her second shot ever with a blaster is dead on the money. She misses the first time and then is a sharpshooter after that. And I don't want, this whole nonsense about the stormtroopers in the first trilogy not being able to hit anything is complete and utter bogus. They hit everything they aim at. They destroy the Jawas. The whole point of them running around the Death Star was to get them to follow the ship. So it was really to channel them in a direction that they wanted to go so that they could escape. This is, Tarkin even says it. I'm taking an awfully big risk here, Lord Vader. This had better work. When they put a traction, some kind of bug on the ship. And they're also the heroes. Leia gets shot. C-3PO gets hit, in pieces in the second one. R2 gets nearly completely destroyed in the first one. This is the whole nonsense of the exhaust port is a plot hole, which it isn't. But these are the people that like the new movie. It's like they didn't understand anything about the first 6 movies, and now they have a movie they like. It's amazing. So, but
it is what it is, man. It's the current culture, and unfortunately, I really can't say much on Star Wars because I've never gotten into it, and I know I've said that so many times. But I'll use a video game analogy because for me, it's a lot easier to explain, and why not? So recently, I got the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, the mini SNES that Nintendo released essentially with all the older games on the SNES. Now, I never had a SNES of my own, but I've always wanted. I never got to play one. I got to play them, but just never had one of my own. So one of the things that I was telling my nephew, who was also a gamer with me, and he agrees because he's playing these games, is like how much he doesn't like the recent Street Fighter game, Street Fighter V, because it is in itself a very incomplete game. It's not finished. It has like almost no incentive for you to play unless you're a competitive player. And even then, he's not a competitive player. He does play online. He gets bored of it. Meanwhile, I introduced him to this game, which includes the original, not the original Street Fighter game on the SNES, but a Turbo, Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And he's enjoyed it. He's loving it. And why? Because there was a sense of, these were a sense of back then. You didn't have everything was just clear graphics and stuff. It was about gameplay. It was about story. It was about enticement, like how to get people to want to play the game. It's the same thing that movies should strive toward. You should try to make the movie so that people are drawn into enjoying it, not just tossing things at the screen or checking off a list just to make sure an audience is entertained. If they want to be a part of it, they will come to it naturally. No one needs to put a gun to their head or shove something to their face to get them to go. So the whole thing that you were saying about having to explain why she's a Mary Sue, I think it's pretty clear. If somebody is just getting stuff handed to them and they're just succeeding at the end of the movie, like almost with very little struggle at all, then it's pretty obvious that character.
She's succeeding before the end of the movie. I mean,
yeah.
What we see her doing some stuff, and she has a hard life or whatever. I can buy that she can use that staff and fight with it and stuff like that. I don't understand how come she can understand every creature. That's kind of weird. She, like I said, she gets in the Millennium Falcon, never flown it. I think somewhere in there she says she's gone into she's never left the planet, like low orbit or whatever. She bangs into things. When Luke gets in the X-Wing, we don't see him banging into stuff and then suddenly can fly.
Luke needed training for a lot of that stuff that he pulled off.
Well, he in the first movie, he said he flew T-16s, and there's a T-16 in the where C-3PO is hiding is actually a T-16. So you have, and in the first, in episode 1, we actually watch Anakin in a pod race, and so that's all he does though. He does the pod race. He's in a ship that gets started on accidentally. it's on autopilot till R2 turns it off, and then he's basically playing in. Yeah, it's somewhat of an accident that he lucks into things, but it's not outside the realm of impossibility because we see him for 3 laps driving really fast through all kinds of obstacles, having to weave and dodge, and that's exactly what he does in the ship. And he does get lucky. Luke, I guess, is he's starting to become force sensitive, but Luke already has the skills. He already states that he can bullseye womp rats, which aren't much bigger than 2 meters. He talks with Biggs about Beggar's Canyon back home. He has this experience we don't see as a tell not shown, but it is mentioned in the theme without having to read the novelization, without having to read all the other books. That's the other thing of this video that I was watching today. I tried to. I got about halfway and I couldn't take anymore. The pompous arrogance of this guy just really irritated me. But he's talking about all this extraneous stuff, and it was a Looper one too, where I think it was Looper, where they're saying, well, you can't use you can't. And all these extra,
they're pretty terrible.
All these extra books and stuff that explain stuff. It's like, yes, but you can't just take the movie by itself. And then Solo asked her if she's ever used a blaster. No. I don't know. Well, what do? You just point and shoot. And then she has the safety on. She points, she shoots, she misses. She gets the stormtrooper's attention. She shoots again. She hits him right in the face. She starts doing headshots. All of a sudden, she's an expert. She somehow is able to push Kylo Ren out of her mind when he's mind probing her. She somehow learns Jedi mind tricks by just sitting there and trying it. She relaxes and blinks a bunch of times and downloads lightsaber fighting, and she somehow pulls, I'm surprised she even was reaching out, but she force pulls the lightsaber past Kylo to herself. So this is why, there's all kinds of fan theories of who she is. Some are saying, reincarnation of Anakin, although she doesn't, no one turns that lightsaber on properly, so I'm saying it's not Anakin's lightsaber. I'm calling it right now because they're doing it wrong. She might be the reincarnation of the first Force user. I've heard all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stupid things, and nothing would surprise me. I wouldn't even surprise me if the Snoke took essentially seed from Luke and Leia, stole it somehow, infused it together, and formed this person. Nothing will surprise me with that. It's going to be as dumb as can be.
Wait, from Luke and Leia?
Yeah. Unknowingly, stolen.
Wow.
Right? Steals an egg from Leia. Or force, she could be, conceived immaculately. She could be a force. It doesn't matter. I don't
get on Game of Thrones.
Right. I don't believe. Well, not that way. Not the Game of Thrones way. But I don't think there's anything that they can do in 8 that's going to surprise me, because I'm totally expecting it to be stupid and idiotic, and I'm going to be, if I have any expectations that any of it's going to make sense, it's just going to be, I'm going to be solely disappointed. It's just, Jar Jar he painted this thing into a corner. He has all kinds of excuses, but this is what he does. So him to say he didn't have enough time is a bunch of bull crap. He had enough time, but he doesn't know the source material. He only knows the high points. He knows what make people go, ooh. Star Trek is not about explosions, and Star Wars was always about character development and growth. And the whole point of the first movie, first trilogy, as stated multiple times by Lucas, was basically the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. And, through Luke. All the books say it's from the adventures of Luke Skywalker. So... but I still would like to be in the theater if Jeff rants. It might just gut him, it may emotionally gut him so well that he just sits there like a blob in the chair, kind of like I was at the end of watching TFA, numb head to toe, and just like, yep, it's the kind of garbage, and it's going to make money, and that's going to be the more irritating thing. Although I hope the toy sales continue the way they are, where they aren't selling worth a crap, and Disney is. And this gets to my other point that Dion was making. Yeah, I think Disney is covering their butt a bit here. They're doing a little CYA. This is why we don't have multiple trailers. We have only the teaser because way too many people are figuring out the backlash has started against TFA. I don't know if the backlash will take as long. I think a lot of it depends. I think the apologists are going to love it no matter what, but those people that are on the fence, if they see a lot of Empire, they may be off the fence as they're watching it. And this has the potential to be a crap storm for Star Wars like we haven't seen since people were complaining about little Annie in episode 1 or episode 2 where he complains about sand, or I don't even remember. It's rough, it's coarse, it's horrible dialogue. Oh,
Misa, the sun is hot.
Right. It's.
Oh God, shoot me now.
Right. And the thing is I'm kind of with you when we're talking about some of this other stuff. I really hope it's that everybody that's on the fence, because everybody that sees TFA as garbage is probably going to hate episode 8. And the vast majority are in that bell curve in the middle, and I hope it pushes them over the edge. And Disney, I mean, I want to see an absolute, not obviously a literal bloodbath, but that kind of thing happening with Disney and Lucasfilm, where they just go through and fire everybody, and starting with Kathleen Kennedy and going on down and going, how in the world can we rescue this? I mean, this is what they did with Tron. Made quite a bit of money, Tron Legacy. But the Disney execs decided right then that they weren't going to make another one. It's too nerdy. They don't get it. They don't understand it. But it has gone on to be, it's not a cult classic. It is a good movie. It has a good story. And the way they marketed it was just stupid. But
because that definitely didn't make me want to watch the movie.
Right. The backlash against the SAW nonsense has already started. This is why Mother is not doing well, but then you get a movie like It, which will cost $30 million, and it's now over $500 million worldwide. These well-made movies that just tell a good story and are crafted well, and it's not, hey, we're going to recast everybody as every minority and have one member of the cast be a white guy out of 30 people because diversity. It's just, get the best actors to tell the best story and just go from there. And if they all happen to be black, great. If they all happen to be white, great. If they're all purple men from Mars, I don't care. It's tell a good story, edit it well, shoot it well, have good fundamentals on your skill set, and just let the movie stand and talk. I'm tired of this rehashing nonsense. That's another one of the topics, right? Is a redo of The Nice Guys as an all-female cast TV show. It's like, oh God, really?
Damn it, I can't do. For some reason, I'm just not able to get that high-pitched whistle sound that I'm trying to get. The one where the bomb.
Oh.
Thank you. Just. Like, it hits the ground like Wile E. Coyote, and you see a little puff of smoke.
Yeah, it's like poof. So, when do you think Luke's dying?
I'm just going to say because they need to get it out of the way and have a reason for her to go after the evil man that killed him at the end of 8.
Yeah, it's. I forget who was saying they thought 8, and someone else said 9. Looking at what Hamill has been saying of late, because he actually let it out on his Twitter feed about it being the next trailer being on Monday Night Football. I think this coming Monday. It almost feels like Luke does die, and Hamill's starting to care less and less. Like not about the movies, but care less and less that he's letting information out. Right, because the first one, everything was super secret. No one talked about it. We've already gotten an idea of how much he doesn't like. I fundamentally disagree with everything you've done with my character is pretty telling.
I mean, I wouldn't blame him because the one thing I would definitely say about Mark Hamill is, again, going back to the whole me and Star Wars thing, I've never been big on buying Star Wars stuff, but there have been characters that I've thoroughly enjoyed or currently thoroughly admired. Even if it's like an easy cop-out choice for me. You call me a filthy casual for saying it, I don't care. Like Darth Vader, you cannot hate Vader. Vader's awesome. Yoda might be a bit creepy for some people. I don't know. Most people probably have a thing against green men. But Luke Skywalker, definitely iconic character, stood the test of time. Has been spoofed to death as the Chosen One characters for like God knows how many God knows how many like years since that movie's been the first trilogy came out. Um, but him all of a sudden real and you think about that. You have a legacy of a character like that has been ongoing for years and not even years, decades. It could have been untouched for an entire century. People would still love that character. People will still say, "Hey, it's Luke Skywalker," or at least know who he is. That big of a deal. And all of a sudden, if I'm pretty sure he probably did, he's gonna leak out even some more stuff eventually, if not after the movie when it comes out. Probably maybe because they made him sign something so he can only reveal them in certain ways, or maybe he found a way to get around them, and he's just picking his words carefully. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's really pissed off to the point that maybe, like right before, like the day, like let's say the week or the days before the movie comes out, he outright says, "Oh well, Luke won't be returning for number 9, or he won't be returning as a physical form," and just to drop that on the fans and essentially say, like, that's my fuck you to Disney. That's my fuck you to Kathleen Kennedy, the people who should have never essentially messed with Luke Skywalker. It's a character. I would say that for almost any franchise. People are very, very passionate about characters, especially well-established characters. It's the same thing that happened with Marvel. Disney is, and again, that's another Disney property right now. And look at how the whole Marvel Legacy crap is doing. Look at how Secret Empire is doing. Look at how comic shops and see how many Marvel titles you still have on the shelves, whereas DC is outselling their asses clearly. Even the indie comics right now are doing much better than Marvel. And why is that? Because they took well-established, well-liked characters that have been like, yeah, they've had their ups and downs for years, and they've had even some dark moments in their histories. But characters that people fell in love with, characters that people said, "Hey, look, they inspired me," or in some way or shape or form, they were my hero. I look up to them, and all of a sudden, you're just crapping on them. And there's no other way to describe it. That is exactly what they're doing. They're just crapping them, saying, "Oh, as long as we have the person, as long as we have the image of that character on screen, nobody's going to be able to tell the difference." And I think only now recently, Disney's starting to realize, "Hey, look. Why all of a sudden are there people? Why is there backlash? We shouldn't have backlash. We're giving them Luke, we gave them Han, we gave them Chewbacca. What more do these people want?" And I think Disney is slowly starting to realize it's really the people that they hired to take over the helms and just run with it that are fucking everything up. But obviously, are they gonna admit that are they gonna admit and say, "Hey, look, we screwed up. We're going to take care of it right now so that, you guys can go back to enjoying Luke or Chewie or Yoda or Vader or whatever"? No, they're going to double down. And if anything, when, they mentioned on the show how we're going to get the trailer for it on Monday Night Football, I want to talk about the worst timing and the worst place to pick that for right now. Look at how the NFL is doing ever since they started doing all that. The players started going all anti-America with the
the kneeling.
Kneeling.
Right,
Yeah.
they're kneeling for a meme that has been debunked multiple times. But there are, go read. Stefan Malnew has several videos on it, and he has all the statistics. He has where he gets all his information, and to some people this is going to be not new, but some listeners this might be. But statistically, me as a white male have a 4 times more likely chance of being shot by a policeman during a routine traffic stop.
That is actually pretty true.
And what's so crazy is it's not just statistics. It's statistically as far as how many get pulled over. There are more whites shot than blacks. And, are there policemen who shouldn't be policemen? Absolutely. We had one here in Cincinnati. This guy was fired from 2 different police forces. He ended up shooting. He was a University of Cincinnati policeman. He sees a car, no license plate. He starts to chat. He twice tries to enter the vehicle. He never tells the person he's under arrest, which you can. So an officer is not supposed to not be able to be unless you are resisting arrest. Now the Border Patrol they do a lot of crazy stuff and they go over this over a lot. But then there are cops who've done this. I've seen the video. The guy made no. All he did was tried to flee. So he closed the door. The officer tried to reach in and grab the key, but he already had his gun in his hand when he did so. So yes, he does get dragged, but he gets dragged because he sticks his arm in a moving vehicle. And I'm sorry, this is not Hollywood. That is more likely to get you in serious injury than success. So instead of getting in his car, calling for backup, he ends up discharging his weapon on accident. The problem is Ohio doesn't have a proper statute, so they have to do first-degree murder. Was it premeditated? Absolutely not. It is involuntary manslaughter. But on the flip side of that, when you have an officer dismissed from two different police forces and there were disciplinary problems, why in the flip do you even let him be a mall cop? So yes, there are, and I think the federal agencies are way out of control in many ways. I think there are some issues that we need to have with training and procedures that are better. When an officer does something wrong, they are not very quick to address it and prosecute. The blue line does close. This is where I leave my conservative colleagues, and they think I'm crazy. I'm crazy liberal. No, I want police officers that serve and protect the public. I don't want them protecting bankers. I don't want them protecting businesses. They're supposed to protect the tax-paying public, which is you and I. Are there issues? Absolutely. But is there this that they want to act like white police officers are just going through black neighborhoods going, hey, there's one, let's shoot him, which isn't the case, even amongst the jackasses who shouldn't be police officers. So it's a meme that is tired and been worn out, and the American public is saying enough, and I'm glad. People are burning stuff. I hope they vote with their dollars and they don't go. I mean, we talked about this before. I really haven't paid much attention to the NFL in years. I really haven't watched any games in years. I saw highlights of the last Super Bowl about 2 or 3 days after it was over, about a 12-minute video. And that is as much as the NFL is going to get of my support, and that's been true for years. I would rather watch college football. It's a much more exciting anyway. I do have my problems there, but that's a topic for a different discussion. But yeah, it's, if it was real injustice, I still wouldn't like it because it's not the proper forum. But this is nonsense that they're doing this for, and it's not even real.
The thing that, by the way, listeners, if you want to know this statistically, what is more likely to kill a Spanish-speaking brown person? It's one of two things. Either we will choke on eating a taco, or we get run over by our own mule. It's a myth that we kill one another. It is a myth. No brown person could successfully kill another brown person, unless it's with a gun. In that case, we're dead.
Yeah.
But
well, the black-on-black crime is where the real tragedy is, and no one's saying boo about that. And if you bring that up, you're a racist.
Oh, yeah, believe me, I've brought that up before, and I've heard myself get called a racist for it. And I'm like, wait a second. Are we going back to that whole debate of where you can accuse supposedly a minority group of being racist? And believe me when I say it's really what it is. It's the whole play of identity politics. Like, oh, you can't say that. You don't understand what we go through. And I'm like, that's bullshit. It's a topic for another time. Maybe we'll go into it another time in a different forum. But the whole point is that as it relates to the NFL and, Star Wars, like, look at what the NFL did. They came out with this whole, like, oh, we're going to support the whole protesting and everything, and it's on, and it's on the NFL time. It's on the fans' time because the fans are paying good money to watch these events. And most of these events, like sports, even me who likes video games, occasionally I'll watch sport, wrestling, whatever the case. We pay good money not to be preached to, not to be told what your politics are or something like that, or whether or not you like or hate our current president. That's beside the point. To us, a lot of this stuff is escapism because we put in hours in a day to get that money that could be going to things that we need to survive. For example, we got bills to pay. We may have family to feed. We may have pets of our own that we're taking care of. Maybe we have medical bills. It goes on and and on. So if we dedicate a portion of that money, that hard-earned money that we have, to something that we enjoy, like merchandise, entertainment, whatever it may be, then it's a pretty big. We expect to get quality product. So you have something like the NFL. They're allowing players to kneel, and keep in mind that most people that watch the NFL games are very patriotic. Again, you have the national anthem being sung in almost every NFL game, as far as I remember. And I believe I heard something about how there's something in the rules that says that players must stand during the national anthem, which I don't understand. Then why all of a sudden they're allowing them to kneel without repercussions, which I think is also mentioned in there. But they say something about how they may receive disciplinary action, so I think that's how they're getting away with it. But the whole point is, you're pissing off your audience. You're pissing off the audience that would probably be watching that trailer when it comes out, or could have been watching that trailer and probably would have coincidentally been Star Wars or people interested in that movie. And they're losing viewership. You're putting it on a platform where people are not going to want to sit through an entire game, or even the beginning of the game, of some guy just not wanting to, I don't know. I really don't know how to put it in better words. But he just wants to make a statement. He wants to make a political statement, again, on your time. It pisses people off. I will say this much. If I was an NFL fan and a Star Wars fan, and you told me, oh, the trailer's going to come out on the day of the, I don't know, like, even let's say of the Super Bowl, right? And if the NFL really pissed me off one day, I would not watch the Super Bowl just to watch that trailer. And speaking of the Super Bowl, what an SJW fest that was this year. Holy hell, you want to talk about a NFL preaching to you and everything? It had commercials that were like, oh, immigration's fun and everything like that, and we love over hate and everything, and it was terrible.
Yeah, I forgot about that stuff. I remember hearing about that. I remember Budweiser had a commercial I think I saw beforehand, and it was of Adolphus Bush coming to America. Of course, then I went and looked up his real story and realized that vast majority of that commercial was just made up BS. Surprise, surprise. He had other adventures before he had a brewery and didn't just stumble into St. Louis saying I have an idea for a beer, and that was all garbage. But the problem is, I think, there is a pro-immigration bent on America, right? Other than the Indians who were here, and sometimes we fairly traded for their lands, and sometimes we were really vicious about it. We all came from somewhere else. All our ancestors came from somewhere else. But there was an expectation of assimilation. Now, you do get some pockets like Chinatown and others where there's some, but that is kind of like a confined culture. They're not expecting you to go in that area and know Chinese. They'll speak English. They'll take your American dollars, even though the signs might be in Chinese. But there isn't this expectation that the government has to write everything in Chinese like you get in California. And some people even said, the invasions by Mexicans into California is to retake I forget there's a term that they use, to retake the land back. That was lost during a war with Mexico and Spain. It wasn't, just stolen out of thin air. There was some conflict there.
Yeah, I know. The less said about that, the better, because believe me, I hear it every day.
Right. But the whole idea was people coming here. No, I don't know anybody. Now maybe you'll find some white nationalists, all 12 of them, who are against anybody coming here from anywhere. But the vast majority of people are saying, we want you to come here and we want you to do it legally, and not just hiding in cars and being, especially on the Mexican border, where you have coyotes who are taking advantage of, raping women and sometimes killing people out in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes killing them in Mexico even. They find mass graves and all this stuff. That's the kind of nonsense that really gets on your middle class. I mean, middle class white America. That is me. That's where I grew up. And let me tell you, that's the stuff that turns our stomachs and pisses us off. When we see these people, yes, they're sacrificing all kinds of things, and there's all kinds of people taking advantage of them, and then they come here and do nothing. They are given stuff by the state, and you have veterans in the street. I see them all the time. People that are vets, at least they claim to be vets. They have the cards for it, and we're not taking care of them. And it's like, look, we don't mind you coming here, but come in legally, come the way you're supposed to. come and assimilate, come in and strengthen our culture by giving us your ideas, your culture, your words for things, your food. That's how we get stronger. But just this kind of invasion mentality, no one gets stronger. And look at what happens. What happened in Europe? They're turning areas of Paris and London into the third world crap holes that they came from. And I completely forgot about those commercials. And you are kind of got me wound up here now. But
oh, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. At least I'm passionate about something. Most of my family is on most of my family. My grandparents were the first ones born here. Now I do have a couple of places where you got to go back a couple more generations before you're in Europe. So it's not like I'm not newly arrived. Like I'm the firstborn here, but I'm the third generation born. And I've not been here for 200 years. And my ancestors didn't come over on the Mayflower, and they weren't rich, aristocrats in Europe who decided to come over to the wilds of America and claim that, stake their claim. I have some very shady characters on my family tree. I've got bootleggers. I've got legal brewers. I've got illegal brewers. I wouldn't be surprised to find an outlaw issue somewhere in the fringes. But we all came through Ellis Island like we were supposed to. Back when they had quotas, especially from Europe, there were many times they had quotas, and I'm in many ways lucky that my family was able to get here, because if they'd been a little bit later, maybe they don't get here because the quota has been reached, and that from Germany we're closing until next year. So yeah, I like to see it. I hope that people. It's more than just taking a knee. That's the thing that's kind of getting me, is people are kind of saying, they're disrespecting the flag. But I want the discussion to also include why they're doing it, and it's a narrative that is false. Let's make it a narrative.
It really is.
If they were kneeling, I still wouldn't approve of it because it's in a business. Okay, they are employees. But if they were kneeling to protest black on black crime, and shootings in Detroit and Chicago and Baltimore that happen almost every weekend, I would disagree with their methods, but I would applaud their message. And that's,
as far as the NFL is concerned, I also heard a story about how I think it was the Dallas Cowboys. They wanted to wear a sticker. Again, they weren't getting all. It was just on their helmets.
Right.
Mind you, it wasn't anything crazy. Like they were wearing a big patch or kneeling or anything like that. So they're going to wear a sticker on their helmets. I think it was to honor the officers that were. I think.
Oh yeah. That's right.
Talk about the hypocrisy behind that, and I was like, well, why didn't you let them? Because they were just trying to honor the memory of someone who died in the force doing on the line of duty.
Right.
As far as have I encountered corrupt cops? Yeah, and they've also kind of warped my view on them for a very long time. Do I still get a little wary around them? I still do, but that again, they're people of authority, and they have a gun on them, so you kind of would get wary of them regardless. I get that around people who are military, because I know they could kick my ass if I ever step out of line.
Right.
Same thing with a cop. But again, I thought that I was like, all right, well, whatever, as long as it's fine, and they're not playing favorites or anything. I don't think that's an issue. And again, it's not like it's nothing different from for example, like when somebody wears a pin to honor somebody who has fallen or who has cancer or anything like that. I think there was it really shouldn't have been an issue, but then they weren't allowed to do that. But then all of a sudden now the kneeling thing is out of question. Like, oh no, that's fine because they're protesting something bigger. And I'm like, again, even the NFL, I think, is not realizing, but I do have this feeling that they will, if they haven't already, they will eventually, and they better shape up before it's too late, because their numbers are plummeting. And then you all mentioned earlier about you have people burning merchandise, NFL merchandise, team jerseys and stuff like that. It's a pretty telling sign when you had diehard fans that spent money, and again, jerseys aren't cheap. They can go anywhere from, let's say, I don't know what the cheap, I would say the most inexpensive NFL jersey would be. I know in basketball they sometimes will be as low as $60 at an official store, but I would assume if it's about the same, maybe somewhere around an official jersey would cost around $200. $200, and I'll use this thing right here. Let's put it like this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do a little basic math. let's assume you work a job. I don't know what the minimal is in some other states, but let's just go for the sake of argument, $10, right? And you work 8 hours in a day, and you're working 40 hours in a week. Let's assume that you take an hour off each day for lunch. So you're getting paid for 35 hours. If you do the math, 10 times 35, 350. For the sake of argument, let's not even go into taxes, right? So you get paid every week, 350. Now, 350, damn it, I really don't want to do this right now, and I really feel lazy using a calculator, but fuck it. I really want to get this out in the open. So 350 times 4 is 1400. Now, let me ask you, Brian, give me a number in terms of like what it would, how much you think would be a fair number for rent. Monthly.
Well, around here, I mean, what are you talking about? Like a one-bedroom apartment, or?
Let's assume that it's a one bedroom. Let's assume for one person, one bedroom.
Golly, I don't even know. I would say at least probably in at least a decent metropolitan area and an okay-ish neighborhood, you're probably looking at, I would imagine, $600 or $700 a month.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. 6 or 7. All right. So let's assume that out of those 1400, right? You subtract the higher amount, which is 700. That's already $700 left in that you had in that monthly budget. That's not including yet the stuff that you have to pay for, which includes food, which may include fare or gas money. I don't know what the case may be. May include bills. So I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, subtract food, bills, and other stuff. I will subtract maybe 500. I'm just going to do it for the sake of argument. You have $200 left, meaning that those are the only $200 you have. Let's assume that you don't have anything else to take care of. $200 to yourself in that entire month. I remember before saying something how the jerseys can go up to like $200. Imagine you being the person that finally buys that jersey all of a sudden just to realize that the entire team is essentially thinking less of you because you either have a different political ideology or you don't agree with their message. You basically, probably at this point, feel like utter crap that you spent $200 well-earned dollars on a product that you felt passionate about, only to have that passion thrown back in your face. Think what it would mean, how it would feel to burn that $200 jersey. I don't know how you would feel, Brian. I know I would feel pissed. I would almost even shed a tear at that point because it's like I gave essentially $200 would essentially be 20 hours of my time to purchase one item just so that another team or another friend or some rich owner gets richer. Because again, you know, they're going to make money off of that too, that one sale. And that's not one person. That is many people, millions of people. So at the end of the day, what essentially this whole thing is going on about, this whole protest or whatever they're doing, is essentially not only a slap in the face, but also a kick to the nuts of many fans out there who are, and basically the message is quite clear. We don't give a shit about you. We just give a shit about your money. So you were going to do this whether you like it or not. And NFL doesn't, like, if the NFL doesn't see it soon, they will. And if anything, it might be best if they go down, if that ship does sink, because then it would probably tell the other companies, okay, hey, look, if a company as big as the NFL can collapse, I mean, let's talk about companies that we thought were going to collapse. Look at Toys R Us. I mean, that's a different story. But just think about that. If a company that big can file for bankruptcy, was not to say a company like the NFL might be next. All of a sudden now a big company like Disney might say, listen, we might need to rethink our marketing strategies. What do we need to cut? All of a sudden the people in charge, the people that have been calling the shots, might want to start looking for new employment or learning how to mop or handle a cashier. Because it's only going to get worse from here. And I know I rambled on and on over this, but I want people to really think about that when you understand why it is that the backlash exists right now. It's not as simple as just political ideology. You actually have people who work for a living, and are putting money aside to enjoy entertainment, only to be told at the end that you're quite meaningless, or whatever you think is meaningless. We just want your money. We could care less about your well-being after that.
Yeah, and that's part. I think a big part of it too. I mean, I've seen videos of people burning, season tickets and all kinds of stuff. And now the opportunist on the other side looks like, well, when all this blows over and the fans will come back, they're going to have to rebuy all that merchandise. So in some ways it's very symbolic. In some ways, it does show a bit of a sacrifice because people have purchased this, so they already have the money. Season tickets, for instance, they already have that. They already have the sponsorship. I know someone posted like all the sponsors of the NFL, and I think there were only two companies I sort of do business with. One of them was USAA, which also supports, and they probably are filling it big time right now. They may have already been pulled out. I don't know. But I did see DirecTV is offering people their money back on NFL Sunday Ticket. A lot of people won't give a crap. They're going to watch anyway. So in the end of it, I don't know how much of it's going to mean anything. But it's when you have people just yelling and screaming, racist fans, racist Trump, racist this, racist that, and there's absolutely no dialogue. Because I think in some ways that they do it because they know that there's nothing there. Back in the 90s, we had this expression with there's no there. They were always trying, especially even with Bush, the son, they were constantly trying to dig up things, and many times there was nothing there with some of these Republicans. They weren't perfect, but they didn't have any crimes, and many things they'd have to invent stuff. I think it was Trent Lott that somebody went fishing for a judge that would indict him, and all they did was indict him, and then he quit, and then they dropped the charges. And that was a tactic the Democrats used to get Republicans out of Congress. And so if you think this is something I've been watching for over 20 years, I'm sure it goes back even longer than that. We had a thing recently, this past week, where there was a cadet at West Point who was tweeting pro-communist things. Doesn't surprise me at all. If you were any halfway paying attention when Obama was president, this is the kind of stuff they were doing in the military. They were gutting anybody with a conservative mindset. They were putting their own power people in. This guy apparently has been radicalized by an Islamic cleric that is at West Point and has been for several years. This has been going on. This is I don't know. People want to say it's a conspiracy. People want to say, I think it's just evil that just kind of creeps into all this. And this nonsense with the NFL, if this was a real thing going on, I would be applauding it. Or if they were using, yep, I'm going to click record again, and I'm going to stop my rant. So I'll try to put something in about Stefan Malnou. I'm not sure exactly where I was ranting along because I have my eyes closed because I don't really feel.
Oh no, you was going in on the rant, but I think if anything, I think if anything, it shows that you do have passion for something, and well, I can't knock you for not having some passion.
Well, granted, I'm a white guy. Obviously, I didn't grow up as a black kid, okay? And I didn't grow up in a black neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that's about 50-50 right now. It's becoming more black, but not by a lot. It's not like all the whites are leaving or something. But
it's like me. I'm a Hispanic. I don't know a thing about being a white guy.
Right. So, but the thing is, when I look at the community, I look at what government programs have done to the black family and the destruction. I see these women downtown, these young ladies. They've got 4 or 5 kids, all from different fathers. They don't even know who their father is. And when you come across a family where it's a man and a woman, they've been married for 5 years, they have 2 kids, none of them out of wedlock. They're looked at as the weirdos. That's a problem. When you look at black on black crime and black homicide, it's atrocious. That I think is where the real. I mean, I keep hearing we need more schools. We've been talking about education and other things for years. Government programs are not going to fix it. It has to be a cultural change. It's a heart change. If you're going to wait around for the government to come along and fix it, you're never going to happen. And so part of what they're trying to do with this stuff with the NFL and make fans feel bad and all this other crap, and I know this is a podcast about the podcast that's about pop culture, but this is what pop culture is. It's this amalgamation of just sheer stupidity, and the real stuff gets left behind. And this stuff it has to be a heart change to have long-lasting change that goes generation to generation. There's a young guy that where I work. We talk about this from time to time, and I keep telling him things like, this guy, I don't know if he went to college or not, but he's got some technical training. He's very bright. He does networking extremely well. And I kept telling him, I said, if someone goes to college, and I don't care how they pay for it, whether it's a government grant or the scholarship or whatever, they get a real degree and they are successful in something that's not rap music, that's not a gang, and that's not sports, you cannot culturally keep calling them an Uncle Tom. That's the problem.
That happens a lot.
I know it does.
If you want to talk about how the culture needs to change, it's a little bit like that in the Hispanic culture. Only recently have you seen a bit of a change there, but it happens a lot, especially since when we consider black culture versus Hispanic culture. The thing with Hispanic culture is that there's too many Hispanic cultures. If that makes any sense, you have like Hispanics from Mexico, you have Hispanics from South America, you have Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and it's all over the place. It's like a clusterfuck. So there's no unity. Only recently that's changed, but I think in some ways for the worse, in some ways for the better. With the black, especially me, I was essentially a Hispanic, a non-Puerto Rican, non-Dominican, non-Colombian, non-Mexican Hispanic living in the projects here in New York City back in the 90s. And the reason why I bring that up is because if you weren't in one of those 4 category groups, you were, let's just say, actually, no. If they couldn't tell what you were, let's say you were like, let's say something like Argentinian, Peruvian, right? For a lot of people, especially in projects, and these were again majority black people, majority ghetto black people. You had some good black, people there who well educated, very religious, whatever the case may be. But even then, they didn't know. But again, that's not their fault. They just were not aware of it at the time. The mindset was, and I still remember growing up, how their mindset was, oh, I don't look Puerto Rican, I don't look Dominican. They don't even know what a Colombian was at that point. And some of them, they would assume I was Mexican. And I would tell them, I'm not Mexican. They're like, no, yes, you Mexican. Like, and not as a joke, as if they knew a matter of fact that I was Mexican. And this was me as a kid. So for the longest, I would think I was Mexican. And my parents even had to explain it to me. No, you're not Mexican. Where did you hear that? Oh, some kid told me, and they're like, and she would say it, don't listen. And one thing you have to understand about Hispanic culture, we flat out would, if we ever talked about if we didn't know what another person their name was, we would, if we saw whatever color their skin was, whatever they looked like, we would describe you to them, to everybody based on that skin. So they would say, oh, don't listen to that black kid, or don't listen to those black people, or don't listen to those Puerto Ricans, or don't listen to those Chinese people, whatever the case was. So it was something that would got tossed a lot. And you would also have, again, conflict between Hispanics and blacks over little cultural things too. For example, never call, by the way, I don't know if you ever met a Puerto Rican again, but never call it one or the other. That's the basis for like just wanting to get like beat up, because you want to talk about cultural and identity politics. They hate being mistaken for the other.
Right. Well, I have a tendency to call people I don't know that are younger or close to my age dude, and people that are older than I ma'am or sir, regardless of their skin tone. And regardless of their circumstance. I mean, I had a guy that was, an older gentleman that came up to me, was obviously in his late 50s. He was a bit disheveled, and he starts talking. He says, "Hey," and I said, "Yes, sir." So I reach out my hand. I know he was going to ask me for money, and I almost never carry money anymore. But I reached out my hand and said hello to the guy, and he immediately stopped and says, "You were raised right," And now the guy was with Game a Dollar.
That's something.
And I am like, until you give me a reason to not trust you, not respect you, I'm going to trust and respect you. But once you've broken that, you're going to have to work twice as hard to earn it back. But I know what you mean. And go ahead and finish out, and then let's get this thing wrapped up. We're getting well past an hour and a half.
Yeah, I know. All right, so let's try to see if we can kill it soon. But so basically, let's just, when we bring it back, I'll just make a quick. Do you want me to like make a quick joke about how we got shut down or something? Because it's probably going to be noticeable that the rant just ended.
Well, you just said the Illuminati got us when we first got. I recorded that. It said, but do whatever you want, man. Go ahead.
Wait, did you record the Illuminati part?
I think so. Say it again just in case. Who cares?
All right, so let me know when we're recording.
We've been recording this whole time for 6.5, almost 7 minutes now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been paying attention to everything that's been saying, well, guess what? That is a day in the life of a spick here in New York City. So there you go.
Yeah, and I understand, and I encounter things because I have an accent from nowhere. I encountered it because I was tall. People made certain assumptions because when I had long hair, people made assumptions. My son has long hair. He gets some of that same crap even now. He likes to wear socks with Crocs, which we giggle
Socks
at.
and Crocs.
See, there's my wife's voice. She doesn't know she's being recorded.
Nice to meet you, by the way. Anyways, so I think I'll say one little piece and then we can kill this off for good for tonight. This whole pushback thing. Again, going back to the whole Disney thing, you also have the issue with Marvel Comics. And for those of you that are not well versed in what's going on, essentially there is another comic gate going on. This is related to what is known as a group known as, or at least it's been dubbed as Comic Pros. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but essentially it's a group of comic artists, writers, and such that are against the channel Diversity in Comics. And I know Jeff mentioned them before, that channel before, and how they give a shout out to World Class Bullshitters also. But how I forget the guy's name, the guy from Diversity in Comics, but essentially how he's been criticizing Marvel lately, and all of a sudden now the writers have been getting against him for all his criticisms and stuff he's saying. Now, I don't know too much of both sides of the story, so I'm only versed on a few details, and that's pretty much it. As for the rest of you, the fans, I would suggest listen in on it because that mirrors a little bit of what happened. Now, this is where I have a little more knowledge of, which was Gamergate. Now, if you don't know what Gamergate is, I would also suggest check some of the mundane Matt videos on that. But if anything, look up the Internet Aristocrat and look up the Gamergate videos, and you'll understand why this is a big deal all of a sudden. And the reason why I bring this up is because while we try not our best to get too political, or we may get excited when the political discussion does come up, it's because what essentially has happened is that the SJWs, and let's face it, that's what they are in part useful idiots for a lot of these corporations like Disney, Apple, and you name it, whatever company, right? So you got the SJWs, they're useful idiots. They're the vocal minority because not everybody thinks the way they do. And despite how they may rationalize in their own heads, I don't think like them. Or maybe to some extent, maybe we are just as nuts, but whatever. So they infiltrated entertainment, and particularly in Gamergate's case, they infiltrated games journalism. And there was a lot of corruption there in terms of you hearing stories about developers making shitty games or mediocre games, if you want to be nice about it, but getting favorable scores and from journalists who would claim, hey, look, this is the perfect game, play it, it's a 10 out of 10, an 8 out of 10. Yeah, a text-based adventure that is not even coded right, getting high scores, I would be skeptic too. But essentially it came out. And the whole point of Gamergate at the end of the day was that you want the gamers themselves pushed back against the industry because the industry was giving these people too much leeway. They were giving them too much power. If you want to go to an extent of how bad it got, and I know I might be boring you a little bit here, Brian, but I'll wrap up this in a bit right now. Look up the disaster that was Mighty Number 9, the great Mega Man comeback, the inspiration of Mega Man. It made a comeback. Look up again the Internet Aristocrat videos on those, and you'll understand what happened there and potentially how we could have gotten a very great game that was going to get input by the fans, people who paid money into Kickstarter, to essentially have a say in the game, how the game should function. Or, hey, can we speak to the developers, or can we speak to the programmers, or at least like a go-between, so that we can get ideas out there to make this the best game ever. If you haven't heard the game Mighty Number 9 right now, it's probably because it wasn't even good enough to market. Understand that stuff like this has happened. There is precedence. And that why we may get excited or even passionate about hearing stories like this happen into entertainment now is because the infiltration of this hive mind is essentially ruining entertainment. It's happened already to games. It's happened to Star Wars. It's happened to the NFL. Think about those. Those are major corporations or industries. If it can happen to them, just imagine where it can go and what damage it can do. Hell, actually, no, we don't even have to imagine because we saw what happened with the election. That's all you need to know, ladies and gentlemen, and why we really do need to speak out against stuff like this. Vote with your wallets. Let these companies know, hey, look, if this is how you're going to treat us fans, we're not going to take it. We're taking our money elsewhere. There are, that we will at the end of the day survive without them. That's it.
All right, end of rant, and hopefully we didn't bore people too much, and hopefully Jeff's still listening. So
we lost
right,
drivers. So
we kind of covered a lot of the topics, kind of bang bang bang. So I did promise at the beginning of this we'd have Kendo Slice on as a special guest, and let's go ahead and have him on, and we'll do the BBC, and then we'll go on to some listener comments because we actually have some feedback on our last video. All right, let's bring on. Huh?
I said great.
All right. And now for the fans' favorite part of the show, the BBC with Kendo Slice. Who's up this week?
This week's recipient of the BBC award is Lindsey Pelas or something like that. I don't know the pronunciation. All the information you'll need is going to be linked to you, and you'll see plenty of pictures of her in the thumbnail. But her name is Lindsey Pelas, Pelas. She is hot, she is gorgeous, and she has exactly what she needs to have to be on this list: big, beautiful cans, or a chest, or whatever else you want to call it. But yes, they are huge, they are massive, they are awesome. I want to see them in my face.
Absolutely. That's got the itty bitty waist and a big butt, just like the song says.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, we'll have that in the description below. Thank you, Kendo Slice, and now on to other stuff. All right, thank you, Kendo, with Lindsey Pelas, and I definitely will have pictures of her. Obviously, they're already in the thumbnail if you're listening to this. And yeah, she's a beautiful young woman. Very well created. Indeed. Yes, I'm thinking it's Pelas. Or Pelas. Maybe I'll go find a video and see if she says her name. It's probably Pelas or something. I think she's from Europe.
Hey. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's tasteful nudity, okay?
Yeah, well, not in the thumbnail for YouTube. Only European YouTube. There are weird places on YouTube where you will see naked boobs, but I don't know. I don't know how I get there when I do get there, and it's usually when I've been up way too long and drinking way too much. All right,
yeah,
so
how does that happen?
From the fan cast, number 15, the Filthy 15. You're a Daisy if you do, with Jessica Simpson. We have Eric Ward, who may be on next week as a tryout guest. We'll see if we can get it. What's happening? The images of Jessica definitely do not make me want to sword fight, and that was great. I pinned that one. I gave it a heart. I didn't pin it, but yeah, that was great. That was Eddie. If you're still listening, you probably still don't understand what the heck we were talking about. So no filter.
Just, keep beating your friends.
Right, no filter would like to congratulate Loudy on getting his girlfriend pregnant out of wedlock. Way to go. Yay. I thought you had to live in Hamilton, Kentucky to do that, dude. That'll make sense to about 4 people. Also, No Filter also said, Flashpoint, gone be dump point, just reboot it already, DC. Boy, that's tough to read. I think he's basically saying that Flashpoint's going to suck and just start over. Just fire everybody and act like you didn't start and just do it again. I actually don't think rebooting in the format that they want to do is going to work because superhero fatigue is really setting in. I'm seeing more and more Marvel fans that are in there. Marvel's going to close out very quickly, and then we need a break with no superhero movies for like 2 years. So I think it's too late for DC. I think they've already screwed the pooch, and they're just going to... Again, though, the Chinese market keeps saving their butts with every one of these movies. So who knows? And then
log in there somewhere in that movie.
Yeah, I don't know. And then Kaylin Webb has Eddie with 3 exclamation marks. He also gives some timestamps, I guess, where Eddie is talking. I didn't click on them, so I don't know what they are. But that's all we have. But hey, I appreciate the feedback. I gave a thumbs up to a lot of these while I was as the guys of the fan cast. And like I said, with Kendo, more and more, he's going to be here off and on. It's not like he's told me, hey, dude, find a replacement and I'm gone for good. But I suspect as the main show goes a little bit more and more, he may be here less and less. But that's just my suspicion. He may actually just want to come on here and rant like we just did for an hour. that's outside of the confines of WCBS, but makes sense here because this is where we just talk about whatever it is we're talking about. But hey, that's the way it goes. So, and I haven't been giving out the email address mainly because even the main show doesn't get much in email. But find me as Brainmuffin on Twitter. Liquid Metal Pro, you're on Twitter too, aren't you? Or are you not? I forget now.
No, I'm on Twitter. I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, but I'll be real, I really just don't go on. Like if you subscribe to me on Twitter, I'm pretty sure it's Liquid Metal Pro. You could probably find me, ladies and gentlemen. If you do, all I really do on Twitter is I just occasionally shit post on whatever I'm subscribed to, which is usually either wrestling or something video game related. So
Right.
you'll see me put in like dumb comments. I'm on Facebook, but obviously I don't do jack shit. So
Yeah, and speaking of wrestling, guys, I know they've recorded some ring rust that they haven't posted, and I kind of like, hey, I know Jeff's busy, but put at least one episode out there, dude. I don't know what the future of that is going to be, and I listen to it when I get a chance. Again, I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but it's nice hearing people who are passionate about it and the things they like and the things they don't like and the things they'd like to see. And this is basically what you guys were listening to us go on and on about with the NFL. Again, it's, we're passionate about it. Are we in the middle of it? Can we affect change? Yeah, probably not. But at least we can kind of voice, and people can, you can call me whatever you want. I've been called really nasty things on YouTube because I don't like The Force Awakens, and I didn't like Wonder Woman, and I don't like Gal Gadot. I think it's a miscast. I can't even repeat some of the things that I've been called, and you know what? It's just text on a page, and I go, yeah, okay, fine, that's your opinion, and I just go along with life.
you know what you should do? You should Photoshop those. You should Photoshop your avatar image of yourself with a sombrero and a poncho and a mustache. That way they can't call you racist.
Oh, no. If I did that, they would call me racist for sure. Now, I've been called things far worse than racist. Heck, I've been called far worse. Living in the South as a Yankee in the 70s, I was, called things that, the nicest thing I got called by a classmate once was Hitler. So we'll just leave it at that.
Who probably may or may have done anything wrong as far as I understand it.
Right. But that's just, I understand that I grew up in a very different place as an Army brat, and I experienced a lot of different cultures, even within the country. We moved around a lot, so I got to be out of place in Tennessee. I got to be out of place in Virginia. I got to be out of place in Maryland and in Germany. But I made some good friends along the way, some of whom I'm still in contact with 40 years later.
Hey, that's a good life if I
have
anything to say about
and some
that.
of them even longer. I mean, heck,
Yeah.
I think some of the people I've known since I was, I don't even remember, 1 or 2 years old. I know some people I've definitely known that long. And it's, but this is also why I relish in learning things from other people. And this is part of why I like listening to Ring Rust, even though the subject at hand I'm not an expert at and I'm not really enthusiastic about. But listening to people who are, I learn stuff. I understand. I kind of get a breathe of their cultural being, if you will. And it's great. And in some ways it kind of helps support the main channel and the background. So I keep saying we're going to wrap this up. It's getting kind of late for you, LMP. I know you got to get up early, and I got lots of things to do.
One last thing, and this is just going back to what we said in the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, just don't think of the fan cast as just me or Brian, even though Brian is, I would say the de facto leader here right now, but, or Kendo even. And Kendo's off doing something else with the guys on the podcast. So, don't think of it as just us on the fan cast. There were other people here before. They voiced their opinions maybe once or twice here and there. This is really more about the fans and speaking their minds, having a platform in relation to the actual podcast as well as entertainment. So,
right.
It's a platform. If you feel like you can get it out in the open. Even if it's so much as putting it in our comment section so that we could read it back for you, go ahead and put it down.
Put it in and here I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to be. I'm not an English major, but I do try to speak with at least something that approaches correct grammar. the other side of this is, we do want people to come on, even if it's just a guest spot. I mean, one of the things that we've toyed around with is having, a different person on each week, and not really just so much less of an audition, but just another person. Tonight it's just the two of us. Frank is still in the middle of dealing with some crap, and hopefully we'll be back soon. And I guess we might get Oggs back once, between semesters or something. But part of the way to get our attention in a good way is to have at least a semi-articulate comment, or if it's just, yes, we were ranting and raving, but you notice that I wasn't putting anybody down. I wasn't getting real boisterous and crazy. That's kind of what that's not how I am, and this is about trying to have a dialogue. Although tonight you and I had a bunch of monologues, so I take it with a grain of salt a little bit there. But I like having the conversation, and even if you watch my beer reviews and even especially my supplement reviews, people don't always agree. I've actually gotten feedback on some of my supplement reviews from the presidents of the supplement companies, especially through Twitter, not so much through YouTube, but when I posted it on, they obviously watched it. I had a bit of an adverse reaction to a testosterone boosting supplement, and I heard back from the owner of the company. Now, that is a bit of a power. Now, he never sent me like free samples or anything, but just different ways of taking it. Maybe I'll try it again. I don't know. But that's the kind of reach you can have with a simple video and a tweet to especially small companies. And so I say that in a very long-winded way to say try and be brief. That is something that both LMP and I are working on. When Kendo's here, he interrupts us and he keeps the flow going, which is nice because we'll just have diarrhea in the mouth all night. But just let us know. Give us some feedback. Chat us up in Facebook or in the comments or on find me on Twitter, whatever. But I like having that conversation. And if you look at any of my beer reviews, many times you'll see people who think that my opinion of a certain beer is stupid, and we kind of go back and forth. And many times it's just personal taste, but sometimes there is a little bit more there. But unless you have an intelligent conversation and you're respecting the ground of each person speaking, that they have the moment that they call it used to have, I forget what Indian tribe, but they had the thing called a talking stick, where unless you had the stick, you couldn't speak. And the whole point was to let someone speak and then listen, not wait for your chance to talk. You'll notice that on the main show, you can tell when they're listening and you can tell when they're just waiting to speak. And there's a significant difference in the conversation. When it was a bunch of them, it was really hard to listen and speak because they were all waiting for their turn. And there were times that it was great, and there were times it was annoying. I haven't made up my mind on the new format yet, whether I love it or hate it. I don't dislike it. I think it's just different. We get some interesting insights. I'm glad that Kendo's bringing some of the games back. The pop culture debate I also miss. I'd like to see them bring that back. That would be great. But now for 7 minutes, I've been saying we're ending the show, and it is time to try and wrap up. So,
oh really? I hardly noticed.
Right. So go ahead. Make comments. I appreciate them. Even if you're just going to call us a bunch of ass wipes, that's at least it's still feedback. And
It's a comment.
And I am one of those people that sticks and stones may break my bones. Words. Now, when I was younger, words would make me irritated. But pretty much I'm an extremely slow boil kind of person, unless you're my brother or my wife, in which case I don't have a short fuse. I don't know why, but they just are the lucky ones. But thanks, Eric Ward, for your comments. I look forward to chatting with you on Skype. And like I said, he may be on here next week. We'll see if we can work it out. He's 3 hours behind us, so there's a little bit of difference. So it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But we'll figure out something. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he and I will just have a conversation sometime and put it on as an extra video. I've been trying to find ways of coming with extra videos as opposed to just this weekly podcast with just over WCBS. And I've come out with no real good things that are relative to this channel. I mean, obviously I make my own videos for my own channel, but putting a beer review into the fan cast doesn't make any sense.
Well, how about this? How about fans? How about you give us an idea of what you would like for us to start doing a little more, a little less. Give us an idea. So maybe we can start doing a lot of the shorter videos, just like the main podcast.
Okay.
As long as it's still related to what they say.
Right.
Maybe me or you, Brian, we'll figure something out from there and see how it works out. So,
Well,
yeah.
And we can branch out. It doesn't have to be a repeat of the because the whole point of this, why I named it the Fancast and not the WCBS Fancast, and why you see WCBS Fancast in the title of the videos but not the channel, is this concept that, if ring rust was a little bit more, and granted, Kendo being on all three of them would be kind of crazy, but imagine ring rust without Kendo, and we had a ring rust podcast between the two of you with me kind of refereeing. Maybe it's only 45 minutes to an hour, but it's a feedback to a different podcast. And that's the whole point. This is the fans kind of talking back, and no, I don't want to have 40 of us trying to do 16 different podcast speakbacks, because I could do that if I was independently wealthy and had nothing to do every day. But but
this is reality. This is America.
This is reality, and I've got bills to pay. So let's start. Okay, so fans, let us know, and let's start really and honestly and truly wrap this puppy up. So I have been your host, Brainmuffin, and we have been flying as a duet with Liquid Metal Pro.
Well, as long as that flying isn't anywhere near any tall buildings here in New York City, we're fine.
All right. Pilot and co-pilot, let's decide who is who. Have a good evening, folks, and we will see you next time.